Joe did quite a bit more writing this past summer to just get the foundations in place, but we anticipate just kind of an annual need to dig in, update, keep it fresh throughout the next few years. Any books, supplies, and materials we see would be that cost as well. And what's the ask? We're asking of you right now to approve our course progression, specifically around those revised grade levels so that we can update the course catalog. That conversation starts pretty heavy in January when we get back from Christmas break or from the holiday break, and when our conversations with 8th graders in the middle school and all of our kids talk to our counselors. So we just want to make this like official at this point because the work's already in motion and kids are already benefited or getting benefits from it. So we want to make it real. What questions do you have for us?
I have a question. You had mentioned that there's still quite a few students who do not participate. Do you know, or what is your opinion of why that is? Do we need still more availability for that, or is it interest maybe?
We're only able to offer a few courses with Joe at the time currently. So we have access to courses is number one, and then time for students to meet with Joe or the counselor or Ms. Velasco, depending on their schedule. So it's kind of this puzzle piece that we're putting in together. That is a combination of student and parent advocacy and then helping them find their own natural interest to make their way down to make these plans. Because they don't actually need to be in any of these classes to have these opportunities, but they need to get in front of Joe so that he can start brainstorming and working with them. So ultimately, we need more of Joe.
The organic interest from the kids has grown really quickly. So if kids stopping by the office and asking questions, hey, so-and-so is doing this, how do I get in on that, that kind of thing. It's happening more often. So I think you saw on the chart they're growing interested in enrolling in the courses. We think that can grow organically to some extent, and then capacity is the other issue.
Right.
So if we approve the course progression and we see more demand from students, what down the road do you see as opportunities for us to invest to expand the program? Is it human resource capacity?
Okay.
Yeah, I think tonight we were supposed to kind of stay with the curriculum piece, is what our instructions were, but yeah, I have 71 kids right now this semester, and I teach half the day, so it's busy.
So that's spoken like a former administrator, so nicely done. I just, to Brandy's question about it, being a parent twice that went through this, I think that there just hasn't been the clarity on the sequencing or even the structure of this program, and just the difference in the last year has been, and we're out of it now, but just the difference of it, hearing from the community and from the parents, you both have done a really great job with this, and what I'm most excited about is what you're going to come to next.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what I think is
Really rewarding work. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.
So another question, it's not on the agenda for tonight, so I'm assuming it will be for vote next month. Is that enough time? Is that, if we're voting on it next month, does that help? Like, is that
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, you'll be fine.
Okay, and then I had one other question. I think that was it. I'll come back to it if I remember.
Because I think we do the course book in end of January, early February.
Yeah,
So
Okay.
we're good. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as long as we get courses through to you by the February meeting, we're usually
Okay.
in good shape.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Have a nice break.
You too. Enjoy. Okay, construction, change orders for ECC, MRHE, and HSMS.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
The right place here. So this evening, we're looking at ECC change order 7, elementary change order 8, and high school, middle school change order 7. These have all been communicated to you in various memos over the past couple of weeks. Are there any questions regarding these? Very well.
And those we are voting on tonight.
Yes, you will be
Yes.
voting on these this
Okay.
evening.
Okay, admin communications, COVID-19 update. Dr. Jameson.
All right, let me get this up.
changed the app, so Chris showed me how to do it, so let's see if I can get this one going. There we go. All right. So each month, administration brings forward to the board updates on our COVID-19 data. I will say that for the last few months, we had started to see a decline, which I'll talk a little bit about, and then also highlight some of the changes thus far. So you'll see some changes in the information that's being reported. So I switched out the report from last week, which was initially included in the board packet, just to show the change in the numbers up to through this week. And so what you're seeing now is an increase from last week numbers. So the transmission rate last week was 0.93%, and you can see it's 1.24% currently, and the positivity rate from last week was 7% and it's 7.80%, but 2 weeks ago the positivity rate was 5%. And so we felt like we were in a really good place. The conversations with the COVID-19 task force have been around feeling as if we were settling into a nice trend downward, but we're seeing with the change in the weather and families being indoors that we're having a spike. That's been a big concerning, particularly as districts are starting to move into a max optional standpoint, but the data does not at this time suggest that we're ready to do so. This is actually a new tracking report that St. Louis County started to use. I thought this was interesting because it shows us the current COVID test and positivity rate. Again, a different look at what that looks like. So again, last week it was 7%. Looking at it this week, we're at 8%. And then we look at the number of cases. We had 105.63, which was last week's for the 7-day COVID-19 case rate. And now you see where we are. So again, in order for us to begin to have conversations around mitigation measures, we want to be in the moderate range, but again, now we're in the red range, which is not trending in the direction that we're looking at. And then also looking at the number of cases for kids who are 19 years of age or younger is starting to increase. And so that data is very different than what it has looked like in the past. And then also looking at staff and student rates across the region, we're beginning to see an uptick. So I wanted to continue to show the zip code data for the district. This data has actually doubled since last week. And so last week we had a total number of 6 cases in the 63117 zip code. We are now up to 12 cases this week. And the number of new cases per 100,000 persons last week was 70, and we're up to 140. So you can see the same trend for the 63143 zip code. And so as we continue to be in buildings and remind staff of our mitigation measures and to ensure that they are being followed, also looking at the zip code data is important for us. So for the last couple of weeks, we did not have any positive COVID cases. So again, in looking at the data that was posted last week, we were at 0 positivity rate, and now you can see that for this upcoming week, we're at 0.11%. And so Vince and the nurses do a really good job of reporting that information to St. Louis County and also keeping in track with the cumulative positive cases. And so as we continue to watch that and use modified quarantine, which is to our advantage, we want to be mindful of how we gather and what those mitigation measures are doing for our school as a whole. So I know that we have some families who are struggling with the current decision tree. And so in the COVID-19 task force meeting today, I did have conversations with the epidemiologists as well as St. Louis County regarding students who may have allergies or other ailments that may impact them, their ability to go home or stay in school. And at this time, they're saying any student that's symptomatic based on the decision tree has to go home. So whether it's a cold, a sniffle, runny nose, they are able to come back if they present a negative COVID test. So we are working to identify places where the turnaround is a lot quicker. So I think what's happening currently is that parents are using and families are using their pediatricians, but you have to wait to actually get into the office to do that. and then also wait for the test to come back. So what St. Louis County is urging is that parents use like CVS and some of the drive-through opportunities, which allows the data to come back a little bit quicker. So we know that it's not convenient. We still are looking at test to stay options. Again, that is a challenge. A couple of school districts are vetting 2 local sources that will do it for us, and that would actually be paid through the funding that's available through DESE. So by next month, I should have an update for the board to see if we can actually do that. And so the way that that looks like now is that a Sprinter truck will come on those 2 to 3 identified days that we have. Parents would drive through, be able to complete the test. The test would be completed, and they would get the results in the same day. And so again, we're looking at capacity. There are a lot of school districts that are currently looking to do that. My hope is to have an update and then to pilot at the ECC and potentially the elementary school. And I say the ECC because that's where the biggest need is. Wanted to share the current vaccination data that we have from St. Louis County. I wish that it were reported for the ages of 5 to 11 so we can get an idea of the vaccination rates for that age group, but you can see where we are now for students 5 and up. Initiating the vaccine, 65%, and then 58% completing. I'm really excited about the work that Vince and Ed have done to not only advertise our current upcoming clinic on Saturday for those families ages 5 to 11, and we have had a great amount of interest. And so we also are partnering to allow Brentwood as a result so that they can have students. So the aim is to vaccinate as many students within our community so that we can continue to positively affect the outcomes within our community. And then the last ask, this information is now available on the district's website. We will continue to update once this information is received. I know that Vince is working to create a Dropbox, so once the students within the age of 5 to 11 complete their vaccination, families will have the opportunity, if they so choose, to upload their students' vaccination cards so that we can continue to update the data here. So while we would hope that our vaccination rates for our students who are able to be vaccinated, and that right now is the middle school students 12 and up, we're at 56%, and we really are in a nice spot as it relates to staff at 93%. So we feel really comfortable about our staff vaccination rates. We have a little work to do for those students who are age 12 and up. Also, just want to continue to put the mitigation measures out front. We do know as a result of House Bill 271, so that we don't get swept into any litigation measures, the board will continue to vote monthly on our current mitigation measures. I will not read those, but they are there, and we have not made any changes or adjustments. That's the COVID report for this month. Are there any questions?
I have a question. So those students who do have to go home due to allergies and other things, what do they need to do about still getting their content from their classes?
So It's Learning is currently being used, and for those students who at the ECC, their work should actually be provided to students, but It's Learning is still being used by staff district-wide, so content and having access to the materials is available.
And so if we are able to enter into a partnership where we have rapid testing coming on site, students would still be sent home and would need to come back when that van is on site.
So
But
from
it would
the
shorten the amount of time of internal and the accessibility for.
yes,
testing.
and so from the conversation with the rep from St. Louis County today, he said we can determine the number of days. So if we wanted to do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we could do that, which would help with the weekend. If a student goes home, it would really be up to our discretion. So the goal would be to look at when reports are coming in for students who are tested to try to identify the best dates to put in place. But we do have the ability to put as many or as few dates in place for the Sprinter van to come. So I'm hoping that we're able to do that, and the benefit is that it's no cost to the district, and the state is actually allocating funds for that.
Thank you for being so responsive to the concerns that have come forward from our families.
Absolutely.
This is very helpful.
I know it's not easy.
As far as the vaccine rate tracker, obviously that's just showing the 12 and up vaccination rate at this point. I guess I could ask Vince when he thinks he's gonna, update that. I guess we know kids 5 to 12 won't be fully vaccinated until a few more weeks away, right at the earliest. So, thoughts about if you're gonna break that out or if you're gonna continue to lump students all together?
We have not yet discussed that. We have had conversation about adding the vaccination numbers for students 5 through 11, but that could be conversation for our next COA meeting. We do have a second clinic set up for those students December 4th. So the hope is after we get the students fully vaccinated, that the information will be posted. We have not yet discussed how.
Any other questions? Okay, construction update.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I see that Ed has another video for you this evening, so I won't attempt to describe what you're going to get to see in just a few minutes. Just a general overview. Things are really wrapping up with the elementary and early childhood projects. Just a few little items left to button up, a few pieces of furniture, some door locks. There is one set of doors at the ECC. Originally, we had hoped that we would have those projects completely buttoned up, finished and done November-ish, but due to delays in delivery of materials, certain products, I would say you'll probably see us close out those contracts around February. That's everything. Obviously, our attention now is much more on the high school and middle school building, the project going on here. A lot of work going on down in the old boiler room where the new teen kitchen and some restrooms are going to be. Walls are up, floors in, plumbing, electrical is underway, so that's coming along really well. A lot of work with boilers, getting ready for the new chilling tower. Not really attractive stuff, but the kind of stuff that has to go on behind the scenes. A lot of coordination, a lot of planning. Thanks to both Mike Dietrich and Kevin Drower for working with us, because there's various times that the power has to be off temporarily or the water off temporarily, trying to coordinate that with athletic practices and obviously school during the day. They've been really, really helpful in doing that, so thanks to them. What I would say is, in terms of the overall budget, without giving you these big numbers, probably the best way to describe it is, for example, at the early childhood building, we have paid out, or we're holding and retaining about 98% of the contract amount. So essentially that work is 98% complete, and we've used about 85% of the contingency funds that were set aside. We're set in pretty good shape with early childhood. The elementary, also about 98% complete in terms of work, in terms of what we paid out for holding retainage, and we will have paid out about 98% of the contingency. Honestly, we may go over our contingency amount a little bit on the elementary, because there's still a couple of items hanging out there, but it won't be too bad. And then, of course, the big project, the $19 million project, is this building here. We're right at around 19% complete in terms of work performed and paid out, and we've spent about 17% of the contingency. So it's early, but we're pretty much in line. I do know that Chris is working on an update to the construction budget. He and I are talking about, when he has that done, how we want to move forward and present maybe a more detailed update to you on the overall construction budget. Chris, I'll put you on the spot here. Are we looking at that in the next month or two?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but we'll have a more detailed update. Be thrilled to answer any questions you may have, or we just turn it over to Ed.
Any weather delays that might be coming up that would sort of elongate timelines or anything like that? Is that a possibility, I guess, for some of the work at the high school?
Nothing to be expected. We've had a really pretty good month for
Yeah.
October. It was very little rain.
Right.
The timeline that the architects worked out along with the contractor and the contract documents, Can't speak to the name of this, but there's a standard number of days allocated each month of the year, number of weather days that they need to build into their contract.
Okay.
So far, we have stayed within those days easily.
Good, okay. Thank you.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, I hope you
Yeah.
just didn't jinx us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna blame you.
I had to ask.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Proposition E.
Good evening. This month's video is mercifully brief. But, and while obviously there's plenty of dismantling and demolition to go, it's clear from what I've seen in the past 2 or 3 weeks that there's a lot of building up and building out, things like that. When I visited the elementary school about a week and a half ago, Dr. Thompson was practically giddy when I said, "Show me what's new." And she took me upstairs. This is what used to be the area where Chris Ricks worked in the admissions office or the check-in office, and then this was also, that was nurses' spaces. The nurses' office is now much more spacious and is down on the first floor where it ought to be. So, attendance office is what I was trying to say. So, obviously lots and lots of new lighting is going to be required for this building. These pallets are filled with lighting, the bulbs and the fixtures, and the fellows who were loading these up that day said that what I was seeing was basically all of the lighting that's going to go in on all of the floors that need it. And the fellow there in the orange hoodie said that these are both high efficiency and brighter. So lots of great new illumination coming to this building. So, all right, this is down in the cafe, that build out. That's the restroom space, if I'm not mistaken, right? This is behind that wall we just saw. Remember what the boiler room used to look like. Kind of a horror show, frankly. But this is what a boiler room looks like in 2021. And that's some impressive stuff back there. And like Randy said, it doesn't look like the same place. So, and if I had the volume up, you could see that the contractors love country music. Anyway. All right, the last time that I showed you this space, just on the other side of that wall, this was the former central office. It was bare studs and exposed wiring and things. But the walls are in now, and this particular day, the lights were off, and there's no switch anywhere for me to flip, so it's a little dark. But you get the idea. It's starting to look like office space for real. So, and then that's just outside. There's no more deep hole in the ground, and this is the best evidence that really is public facing that things are starting to build up instead of being torn down. So, that's what I got.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice work.
See what I'm.
Yeah, that boiler room has made a significant change.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you. Ed, can you unhook? Can you unhook?
That desktop makes me a little jittery.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you.
ESSER 3 update, Roxana?
Yeah, so I am back as promised with the ESSER 3 update. I will try to be brief. As you're aware, there's a very large influx of federal dollars into the state of Missouri to support schools in the ongoing impact of COVID-19. The MRH allocation is standing at just over $1 million that can be used for a variety of purposes, which are listed on the slide. As you are very aware, we had comprehensive return to learning plans in place before they were requested as part of this endeavor, and so those are posted publicly on our website. We have a return to learning plan that outlines our tiered plan and everything we did for COVID mitigation strategies, which you vote on monthly. We also have a continuity of services plan that is posted that is really about making sure that no matter what the conditions, we're able to provide quality education, and you lived through that last year, so you're very familiar with what those tiers look like. We did a variety of surveys. The most recent took place early in the fall. We had 185 respondents to a very specific ESSER survey in which we asked folks to tell us what they thought the top needs of kids were and to help us rank the use of funds. Top needs were social emotional supports for students as well as academic support. Top rank funds were hiring of support staff to help accelerate learning and to provide social emotional support with students. And we saw a variety of comments on that slide, or on that survey, that supports the elements of the plan that you'll see. It's a pretty comprehensive plan. I do want to report that both our plan and our budget have been formally approved. We received substantial approval this past month, which was good news for us. I should also, though, let you know that as of this date, the Missouri legislature has not appropriated the funds. So while we have everything in place and we are set to receive the money, there is no money to be received until the legislature acts. And so they have until March 24th to formally accept the money, or the money would revert back to the federal government. So we're in a holding pattern. We've been encouraged to contact our legislatures to ask them to move that money through. They also have not yet appropriated about 1/3 of the ESSER 2 money. So DESE is distributing money to districts that are doing the drawdown until they run out of money, and once that money is depleted, that will also be in a holding pattern until the money can be appropriated by the legislature. So, having said all of that, here's our plan, and there are some things that we've gone ahead and enacted because kids need them, and we're carrying them out of our budget. We can't charge them. We can retroactively charge off to ESSER 3 when the money comes, and there are other things we're holding because they're big ticket items and we have to wait until we know that we have funding. So what you need to know about this plan and the plan overview is we have interacted with a wide variety of individuals to try to understand student needs. We have been able to identify through our assessment data, which you've looked at, as well as our engagement data in its learning, some groups that we believe appear to have disparate impact of the pandemic. And so you see those groups listed there. We did take a variety of public comments and followed up with representatives from specific groups in order to create a plan that would provide the term we use at MRH is wraparound services, but we wanted to make sure that we were able to have flexible instruction in class with push-in support, as well as some pull-out support, in-school tutoring. So we've got TAs that can push into classrooms to provide on-demand tutoring. We also have formal tutoring sessions before and after school. We have reimagined some advisory time, as well as created some very targeted study halls at the secondary level. We've been able to provide some additional counseling support, as well as increased, that we increased a social worker. We continue to provide social emotional classroom supports, and Vince has worked really hard to make sure that we have strong partners that come into the schools to provide additional services. Part of our plan had to address how to make kids feel welcome at school, or to help kids re-enter school after COVID. Many of those things you're aware happened because you were part of those groups. We have I don't think I need to go over all of the things we've been doing along the way and over time, but it continues to be a focus as we check in with students with social emotional needs. And actually we just did walkthroughs of high school and middle school this week, and part of the middle school plan very specifically was how they're doing check-ins with students, so we got to observe some of that in action. Efforts in the plan had to address how we were going about ensuring in-person learning. And so, there are a variety of things. Again, you've heard all of this before. I won't repeat all of the things we're doing, but many of the things that we already had in place are instrumental things that we needed to report in the plan. So, trying to look at how we are distributing funds based on building needs and individual student needs. These are all pieces that came out very strongly in terms of providing additional supports and things that needed to happen within the district. You'll see that we reopened preschool, the increased social work support, teaching assistants for high-dose tutoring, put a permanent subs in buildings so we have continuity of instruction. These are all things that you've heard me talk about before in prior board meetings. We did have to set aside in the plan 20% of the funding to specifically address learning loss, and so the MRH plan includes after-school learning labs in math and reading, as well as high-dose tutoring. We've set aside funds in the plan to provide additional high-interest summer enrichment programming. We've also talked about improving and increasing our MTSS or RTI processes, as well as continuing to look for mental health services and support, as well as resources and materials to support social emotional learning within the classroom and teacher professional development. We also have money in the plan for ongoing mitigation supplies. We've had staffing considerations, so we did COVID training and create COVID stipends at the beginning of the school year. Again, many of these things you're very aware of. And we can continue to support our educational technology to make sure that virtual learning is still an option for us. So that's where we are. We did have a ESSER plan work group committee that met in October, and so we were able to take additional feedback from community members in October to see how things are going. We'll try to get a survey out again by the end of the semester so that we have more information coming back. We can make adjustments to this plan as we go. So if additional needs come up, or if we need to make changes based on when that funding actually comes through, we do have the ability to do that.
Can we circle back around to the budget one more time?
Sure.
So the money hasn't been appropriated, and so we're pulling money from other places in order to do all of this. What are the chances that the money won't be appropriated?
At this point, I think everyone is assuming and optimistic that the money will be appropriated in short order after the first of the year. But again, we can't, it's not there until it's there, right? So
Right.
I think districts are moving forward with the things that are essential to move forward with, and then they're being cautious and holding some in reserve. We can retroactively apply anything that qualifies or anything that's in our plan, and if we take care of that out of district budget and we need to apply it to new things in a future budget, we can make those adjustments and do that when the money comes in. But I feel like I need to explain what's actually happening, because if you were expecting to see certain things and they have not yet happened, there's just a little bit of a delay.
Thank you.
Roxana, do we have tools in place to measure the effectiveness of each of these interventions so that we can know which ones are really working well? I mean, is there a way for us to evaluate the efficacy of these efforts? And I'm thinking particularly if there are ones that are more successful, do we look at ways to perpetuate them beyond the ESSER funding?
Certainly. For the high-dose tutoring and the after-school programs in particular, we do have a data collection underway so that we have information about what's happening with those pieces and the effectiveness. I think that we still are grappling with what we need to put in place in terms of social emotional learning, and how specifically we want data to be more uniformly collected. I think we're collecting things along the way, but not always in ways that make it easy to make those comparisons.
And I think for the SEL piece, the elementary school is actually piloting a screener that actually will give us data to compare with any referrals or students who are going to see counselors. So it looks at internalizing and externalizing behavior. So the teachers actually complete a series of questions, and then from the questions that are completed, it will tell you which students need additional support. So we will be able to see from the social work support that's being provided and the counseling that's being provided, whether or not it's helping to decrease some of the behaviors. Now, that's not in place in all of the schools yet. Vince and Megan are working to work with that CAT to look at screening tools district-wide as well as SEL curricula. But at this point, we have not yet gotten there because the funds have not been released. But that's also been a conversation during our teacher leader group, which we talked about today when we met.
Any other questions?
Okay, assessment report, star data by Rachel.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Ward. I'm the coordinator of assessment, data, and accountability for the school district. Tonight I'm here to go over our fall 2021 STAR benchmark assessment results. The goal tonight is to give you an overview of how our students are doing in reading and math this fall. Some questions I use are here, but just so you know, throughout this presentation, I'm going to be comparing this fall's results to 2018, 19, and 20 results. So STAR 360 is an adaptive benchmark. It's given in this year in grades K through 9. If you remember, we added grade 9 this year. This data represents overall district results. We have early literacy, which our K1 students take, reading and math, which is 2 through 9. Throughout this presentation, for reading and math, the proficiency levels that I'm going to be talking about correlate to the Missouri math proficiency levels. So you're going to be talking about being proficient or advanced or basic and below basic. However, with STAR early literacy, it's based on percentile rank because we don't have that Missouri math for K1. And the comparisons were made mostly from grade level to grade level. So I looked at like last year's first graders and this year's first graders rather than the cohorts, although I did observe some cohort patterns as well. So first we're going to talk about some overall grade level summaries. So this first graph right here represents the STAR reading for grades 2 through 9. The height of the bar represents number of students. The number on the graph is the percent of students. So this is 2018, 19, 20, and 21 fall administration. The green are students that are proficient or advanced. Red is basic and below basic. So as you can see here, our percent of proficient or advanced has remained fairly similar. So those are all three, actually 63% there. Like it's a little misleading because the height of the bars represents number of students. When we compare this to math data, which you have to be a little bit careful because this represents 2 through 9 and math is 3 through English 2, so just keep that in mind. But it is somewhat similar. Math is a little bit lower than some of these have been. So our spring 2021 math, we had a 56.61% proficient or advanced overall. For early literacy, the benchmark, again, I just want to remind you, I just said a minute ago, this is based on percentile rank, not proficiency. So this is if you meet the 40th percentile or not. So first graders in 18, 19, 20, and 21. Typically, we have close to 70% of our first graders that are proficient or that meet the benchmark. And this year we had 54% that met the benchmark. So overall, when I looked at reading from STAR early literacy all the way through 8th grade, and looked at the 4 different years here, kindergarten actually was pretty consistent with what we had seen in previous years, 79%, usually between 77 to 80. First grade, right there, what I just showed in the previous slide, is where we saw a pretty significant difference. 2nd through 8th was pretty consistent with what we've seen in previous years this fall. Now on to math. So again, this is back to the state proficiency. So this is proficient or advanced, 18, 19, all the way through 21. So you can see that our percent proficient has decreased. It's decreased there in 19 to 20, and it has remained about the same. These bars are higher because we added that 9th grade administration for more students. So, but we have 41%, we dropped about 10% there in fall of 20 and have not picked that back up yet. When we compare this to our overall math proficiency, again, our math was slightly lower. We had 39% proficient or advanced, but again, that's not exactly the same population that we're comparing. I should just keep that in mind. So overall, when we look at our math, second grade math was consistent with what we had seen in previous years. And actually, in some of the younger grades, third and fourth grade had a slight increase. So everybody dropped in grades 3 through 6 from after fall of 2019, so fall of 20, what we just saw in the district patterns. However, grades 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 have not seen that increase go back up. 7 and 8, we saw a pretty significant drop in proficiency. Now we're going to look at this data, just some patterns overall by ethnicity. So when I looked at this, the proficiency so I did overall, everyone that took reading. In previous years, proficiency for our black students had been around 30 to 42%, kind of ranged a little bit. And this year, we were at 35%. Multiracial, 60 to 67, we were at 59% this year. And white students, 71 to 80%, and this year was 71. This is somewhat similar to our map. So if you remember our map, we have 28% proficient or advanced for our black students, 56 for multiracial, and 66 for white. So as you can see here, our white students have a higher percent of students proficient or advanced than our black and multiracial students. In math, we saw a drop for all ethnicities, 27 about down to 15, 50 down to 37, and 60 to 50. However, our black students had a higher percent of decrease. And again, this does correlate with our math. We had 15, 26, and 49% proficient or advanced. When we look at it by lunch status, proficiency for students who qualify for reduced lunch, typically 45 to 53%. This year it was 40%. And those who do not qualify, it was about consistent there, 72 to 80, and with 73 this year. In math, it's usually around 30%. This year it dropped to 23. And we also see that same math for students that do not qualify. We got a 10% decrease there about. When I was looking at this data, though, I started noticing some patterns and wanted to look at ethnicity and lunch status combined. And so this next graph here, I just was trying to answer some questions and see if I could observe some patterns. And so I combined these two here and looked at percent proficient or advanced. So what you're looking at here is this lowest line here are black or multiracial students that also qualify for free and reduced lunch. Here we have our white students that qualify for free and reduced lunch. Here we have black and multiracial that do not qualify for free and reduced lunch, and our white students that do not qualify for free and reduced lunch. So these two are our full pay, and these are free and reduced. Then you have black, multiracial, and then white. So you can see that we did have a slight decrease here with this group, but you have to keep in mind with both of these populations, the population size with some of those patterns there. So there wasn't an observation there that I would note for that particular group per se. But as you can see, it's remained steady, and some of those similar patterns are still there. In math, that was reading. In math, similar outline of those lines here. However, what you do see in math is this all four groups in that 2020 dip, which we're seeing district-wide. For students that have an IEP, we actually noticed that this year our percent proficient or advanced was 35%, and that's actually in line with what we have seen in previous years. And in math, it was actually slightly higher than it had been in previous years. Again, keep in mind the population size when we're looking at percentages here and noticing patterns. So in conclusion, some things that I would walk away from this evening are the pandemic appears to have had the greatest impact on our first grade students, and in math, especially in those upper grade levels. 5th grade and above took a pretty big hit and have not we haven't quite seen it heading back up yet. Reading levels have remained fairly consistent, and our math levels have decreased and have not returned. When looking at math by ethnicity, Black students have had the largest percent of decrease. Students who qualify for free and reduced lunch dropped in proficiency in both reading and in math. And Black and multiracial students who do not qualify for free and reduced lunch outperform the students, regardless of ethnicity, who do qualify for free and reduced lunch. Black and multiracial students who qualify for free and reduced lunch have the lowest percent of students who are proficient or advanced in reading and in math. And students with an IEP have had a similar proficiency throughout this past 4 years. How are we responding and what are we doing? Roxana touched on a few of these things in her ESSER plan. But just so you know, we are using this data to guide our instructional walks. Yesterday when we were in the buildings, we were definitely keeping this information in our mind. Our PLC meetings use this data, and our professional development is guided by this data as well. Administrators, teacher teams, instructional leadership teams, we're all participating in direct data training. I've been in every building and every grade level with groups of teachers going through data and talking about this. And it's been come up in probably many conversations that Anita has been involved in, and Roxana as well. We are partnering with Washington University and Math 314 with a STEM pact organization to just look at our math data, or our math curriculum, and I think that there's been a presentation or an update on that fairly recently. That's been a lot of work that we've been doing. I know there was a new early childhood math curriculum that was adopted for our interventionists to try to streamline that and make sure that we really are meeting those kids' needs early on. WIN is What I Need Time was implemented at the elementary school, and it's being used to provide additional supports, and we're working on using that data to guide those supports and make sure that we're monitoring what's being used during that time. Beyond the Bell, clubs and tutoring are available in multiple buildings, definitely in elementary, middle, and high. And then there's been some additional math interventionist time added at the ECC when we had some part-time positions, so they've got some extra time there. And I know that our teachers at the elementary school participated in letters training to help with some reading and phonics. That's just some of the stuff that's been happening. But it's mostly been digging in this data and guiding our work. What questions do you have about the data that was presented this evening?
I actually have a question, but first I have a statement. I really appreciated this presentation. I felt like this presentation just answered a lot of questions ahead of time. It really broke down the data, but also told me where you're headed and what we're using the data for. I mean, this was an awesome presentation. I just really do appreciate it. The one question I had was, I appreciate breaking it down to the free and reduced lunch plus different ethnicities. Is it possible to break down, and I'm looking at that chart with the lines, to do one that has our Black students who have free and reduced lunch and separate out the multiracial? Only because you separated out prior to that, and so it would be interesting to see, once we get into the free and reduced lunch, how that compares as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Because there was a pretty big difference between Black and multiracial on the previous slides.
Mm-hmm.
My only concern, I'll look at that district-wide, I probably can do that. It might get a little
Because of the numbers.
small.
Yeah.
We get like
That's what I was
500.
thinking.
Yeah.
It might
Yeah.
be too small.
Yeah, I'll
The
definitely look at that.
percentage, it just skews your percentages,
Yeah.
so you have to just watch it.
Right.
It's really little.
But you explain it beautifully anyway. So you're telling us, hey, this is how it's gonna be skewed because of those numbers. So, yeah.
Well, it's not necessarily skewed, it's just hard to find patterns sometimes.
Right.
Because it's like if you've got a population of 3 students,
Right.
you only have a couple options, percentages to even achieve. So,
Right.
yeah, we'll look into that for sure.
I just want to note it was very helpful to see the curricular interventions that you're making across the buildings. I wonder, because we're seeing these disparities that are entrenched and persistent outside of curricular interventions, what else can we be doing to move this needle around the racial disparities in our outcomes? Is this cultural competency infused into our curricular approach? How do we get at this from an angle beyond the instruction itself, the content of the instruction and the interventions?
So, I'll jump into that one. That's a great question. I think one of the things that I've been focusing on with the learning walks with principals is how instruction is intentionally being delivered and not necessarily teaching to the middle or to the high, but how are we supporting students who we already know are struggling. So for example, if we're going into a classroom, and I think one of the things that Roxana mentioned with Dr. Dietrich's walks yesterday is, can we visibly see that teachers are intentionally grouping students so that when they're working with them, they are able to hone in on what those skills and those gaps are. So I think for me, part of it is how we are supporting teachers with how they deliver instruction in the classroom and the quality of questions that are being posed to get students to be able to think about their own thinking and to explain their thinking. And so I think the learning walks yesterday revealed a great deal of what the work that needs to be done, and then also the professional development we need to provide to teachers. So I don't want to say that we need to add any new programs. I do think that what we have in place will work. I think a lot of the work is the coaching and the feedback that's being provided to teachers so that they can actually change their practice to meet the needs of students. And I would even say that that's very true. We spend a lot of time in the math classrooms, and I chuckle because people know exactly where I'm going when I'm in buildings, but looking at how students, say, for example, in the math labs are receiving instruction. And so the conversations have been around, we should not see the same thing that you would see in a general classroom where students are getting instruction. We should see the use of manipulatives, more Kagan cooperative structures and things of that nature. So that's where we're really putting a push towards.
And I'll just say this, I had third and fourth year teachers with me today, along with Melissa. We had two of our teachers are NCCJ trainers as well. So I had all of the third and fourth year teachers with us today in two different cohorts, looking specifically at culturally responsive teaching practices. Today's topics were really looking at implicit bias and microaggressions and how they manifest in classrooms. So we're also doing that work alongside the curricular work.
You know, something I've noticed too with my girls being in high school, I mean, middle school was great too, but I noticed that the teaching style is a little bit different in high school because they're giving them more independence, but it's also had the effect of making my girls do better in school. It was more of a struggle, and I think I'm seeing that they're kind of getting an opportunity to explore how they learn, whereas I know that part of the thing in middle school is also, hey, we have to teach this curriculum a certain way. So, you know, they want to help the kids. That's across all the buildings, but I do see a difference in that, kind of what you were talking about not necessarily teaching to the middle, but also trying to address the different ways that the kids learn. And I'm really seeing that enacted in high school, and it's making a huge difference, I know, at least for my girls.
So if I can just go back to what we originally talked about with the actual presentation with Rachel. So reading it is one thing, but the way that you are able to come to us and synthesize this is so very beneficial. So I just want to thank you, because I know that we can throw things at you 20 different ways. But thank you so much for
Absolutely.
what this looked like tonight, because it's very helpful.
Absolutely.
So, and I always appreciate the Rachel synthesis on it. It really makes it concrete for me.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you so much, Rachel.
Have a good break.
Yes, enjoy. Okay, superintendent entry plan.
I should not have updated this computer.
Yeah, update.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Chris is like, you put the new thing on, now I can't find and make anything work. All right, so each month I bring an update. I will be succinct. You can see the changes in the colors that are outlined, so I'll just pick up a few. So under Goal 1, and it's primarily with the relationship and collaboration with the board. So item 7, the district strategic plan, I have started the work on that to begin to think about how we want to go about planning for that and the timeline. And then the other is the planning of the board retreat. So that one is actually yellow still, but after December 4th, which is the date that has been scheduled. It will be green. The agenda has been sent to Brandy for review, and then adjustments will be made accordingly to ensure that we're covering the items that need to be covered. For Goal 2, just want to point out a couple items. For number 4, that one now is green, where it talks about role expectations and responsibilities. The collaboration time that I have with my direct reports has been beneficial because we're able to talk about those things one-on-one as well as support that's needed. And then I actually changed item number 7 regarding classroom learning walks and attending school functions green. But that will still be ongoing. And so initially I had a yellow, but I do it all the time, and I'm very visible within the school community. And dance with kids. They like to see me dance. For Goal 3, this is around instructional practices. So I've already had an opportunity to review the interventions and have conversations about what we have in place and what some of those gaps are. This particular goal, particularly because it's situated around equity, will be critical when we begin to talk about MSIP 6. So on Tuesday, or it might have been Monday, I had an opportunity to go to Jeff City to have an idea of what it will look like. And so it is not heavily dependent on academic outcomes. It includes multi-tiered systems of support, as well as how we're supporting the students who Rachel actually discussed with us. And then item 7 is around data warehousing our system and things of that nature. And we have been having ongoing professional development, as Rachel indicated, around EduClimber. And that's been beneficial not only for me as a new superintendent, but also for our principals so that they can use the data. I did complete my meeting with Chris. I was quite grateful for that, to see how we approach budgeting and zero-based budgeting, and then the process and the line items. So we did spend time with that, and then I have some homework for him. And then the last piece that now is green, which is the visibility in the community. Again, I could have kept that one yellow, but I figured I'd have made great progress. And that is the monthly superintendent update for the entry plan. What questions might you have?
No questions, thank you. Okay, it's the Chris Holzer Show.
All right. Well, good evening again. I will begin with our monthly financial statements. This will be for October. The items of interest outline the broader points. I will take a little bit different approach than I typically do. Go ahead and scroll to the last page. As I add my glasses here. I will say that right now, finances are still strong. To date, we've received $1.7 million in revenue on our operating side, and we've expended $6.4 million. So that leaves a $4.7 million hole. I would remind you that December is the month where we receive our first large distribution of tax receipts. So I am anxiously awaiting, as are those in my office, for December 20th, 21st, or 22nd, when those funds arrive. And that will quickly change these numbers. On the debt service, we're tracking as we would expect. And on the bond issue funds, we began the fund balance with $25.8 million, and we have expended 6.1 of that to date. And this is cutting off my last page here, where your favorite part, where I show the fund balance percentage. So this evening, after last month's budget amendment, our projected fund balance as a percentage of expenses is 46.3%. That will change next month after the presentation of tonight's budget, but not by very much. Are there any questions? Very well. Then, with your permission, I'll move on to our budget amendment.
Please do.
And on this one, I will also ask you to skip to that last page, only because this is a very small budget amendment. And everything on the last page, not the last page, Roxanne, I'm sorry, the second to last page. Second,
Magnifying glass.
the last table. Everything is contained within this one area, and this is such a small change that I can cover everything here. So we are reducing local revenue. This is our sales to students, our school lunch sales to students, since we're still operating under the seamless summer mechanism. All lunches are still given to students on behalf of the federal government. So we will not be collecting any fees from students for lunches with the exception of a la carte items. So we've reduced the budget to reflect that. And then on the expenditure side, these are just some corrections to the federal funds expenditures that we amended last month. Just truing those up a little bit more firmly. And after these changes, we'll change our ending fund balance by 0.1%. So 46.26% as opposed to 46.3. And I will be asking you to approve this evening. Any questions? Very well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris.
You're welcome.
Okay, on to calendar of events. As you know, there will be no school Monday and Tuesday, in addition to the days we already had scheduled off. So we're excited for that. Thanksgiving is next week. Can't believe that.
Will there be a work session on December 2nd with the retreat being held on the 4th? I can't remember if that is happening.
Actually, I had talked to Brandy about that, so one of the items that I would like to add to the back end of the work session versus the retreat versus having another work session would be the information on MSIP. So I did get that information when I was at DESE, but I do plan to include it with the information that's sent to the board tomorrow because it's about 40 pages long, and I want to provide ample time to review, and there is a lot there, so that will be my request.
So that is the plan. So once we can make sure that we can handle it that way,
Okay.
then the work session will be canceled, but it hasn't been yet.
Got it.
And I believe I had indicated that it was gonna be a full day, but it's really not. It's only a half a day. But I just wanted everybody to keep their schedules open just in case, because we didn't know how long it would take adding that stuff in. So we'll get a more concise timeline to you guys this week. But I think we'll still be out about 1:30. And we're finalizing everything, but I'm excited. We've got a survey that we'll have to take right before. It won't be too terribly long, but HYA has really, you can tell why they're good at this. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it'll really be helpful for us as a board.
Excuse me, Brandy, is there a location for this retreat?
There is a location, but I'm gonna let Bonita answer that.
We're actually going to meet in the R&D. In the R&D.
So here.
Oh,
Here,
okay.
sorry.
I wanted to go to the Ritz-Carlton, but I was told no. Okay. All right, so we've got the 20th annual Christmas tree walk coming up on December 3rd at 6 p.m. Of course, our retreat, SSD Governing Council. December 7th, school board candidate filing opens, so that's a really important date. December 9th.
So I heard.
Looking at a couple of you.
December 9th, Mid-County Chamber Holiday Open House. Of course, CBTF on the 15th. And then our board meeting on the 16th. And then the filing closes on December 28th. So some important dates. And then January 6th work session, which we also may end up canceling depending. So we'll let you guys know about that. Mid-County Chamber Trivia Night, January 15th, and then I'll stop there because we'll have another meeting before those next dates come about. Is there anything else that anyone wanted to address as far as dates go? Okay. Okay, moving on to, well, I just mentioned the election dates, but what we need to talk about is the cooperation agreement letter.
There was
We
already.
voted on that last time, correct?
Okay. So, does anybody have any questions about the cooperation agreement? We've already discussed this before. Okay.
No,
And we're voting on that tonight, is that right?
no.
Yep.
We approved it last.
Oh, we already did approve it,
Yeah.
so there's just a copy of it.
Mhm.
That's right, I thought we did. Okay,
And that's just the retreat info.
yep. And the budget impact is on there, so,
Mhm.
any questions about that? Okay,
Looking forward to it.
I didn't hear you.
Are you talking about the retreat yet, or are you still talking about
Still
election?
talking about the retreat.
Oh,
we
yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I think HYA is gonna do a good job for us.
I really do, and I thought it was pretty cost efficient considering all that they're doing. Great. Okay, mitigation measures?
And this one is actually the one that we had before, and that should be a voted item just based on the, will be voted on as an action, which was presented in the previous presentation under the COVID-19 report.
Okay, and that's on the action items?
Yes.
Okay, board committee liaison reports. And what I think we'll do for the next agenda is actually have it listed out under each group so that we can have a report for each group. Does anybody have a report today, though? Amber?
Does anybody else have a report? Okay. I thought I could report on the fundraising committee, which met 6 or 7 weeks ago for coffee.
It was lovely.
So I just wanted to report to give a little update on how we're going to progress in raising funds for the Nelson Mitten Scholarship, which we award in the spring. I am working right now to develop a prospect list and a campaign strategy to engage local business owners, community members, and alumni who have received the scholarship previously, to solicit and raise awareness that we're raising money for the scholarship fund. So this will be a fairly formulaic first step in engaging through a letter, which has a response vehicle that allows them to return a check if they wish or to donate online. But we will all, as board members, be engaging in that process by being assigned prospects that we follow up with. So I'm going to be your taskmaster when it comes to that. So in addition to mail, the campaign will also combine some digital and personal outreach, and I'll be coordinating with Ed after the first of the year to start to build resources on the Mitten Scholarship page that makes it a little bit more personalized and builds some energy for that campaign. And then, depending on our progress in making those engagements and raising funds and having those conversations, we may consider a spring fundraising event to kind of culminate that fundraising process. So we're going to kind of see how things go and how quickly we're able to engage some of our previous donors in donating to the scholarship. So I hope to have another report for y'all in January. But in the meantime, look for an email from me inviting you to enter information about additional prospects that I may not be aware of, and to volunteer to do follow-up for those that you know in the community or ones that we maybe haven't identified previously. The other thing that I wanted to inquire about is the scholarship application itself and whether we as a board want to look at that again and really see if it's the vehicle that we want to continue to use. And I ask that because we have had a very homogeneous group of students applying and receiving that scholarship. Is there a way that we can build more diversity in our award recipients by looking at that scholarship application?
It sounds to me like if the fundraising committee wants to look at that and make a recommendation, that would work.
I would like to make that recommendation, and I will be happy to work with Amber on that. Because I have some strong feelings about the application process, and it has evolved. When this first started, this was one of just a few, and now we have, dozens of opportunities of local scholarships for our students. And I think it is a good application, but we want to make sure that we do make it appropriate, the amount of work to put into this application, that's also appropriate for our students
Right.
and enticing as well, so.
Would it be
Pam?
appropriate to appoint like a faculty member to participate in that
Absolutely.
board then? too?
Yes, absolutely.
that sounds
And
like a
so,
great idea, too.
that'll be next month's report back
Yeah,
from,
yeah.
Amber will
Cool.
talk about fundraising, I'll talk about the application.
Sounds good to me. I think we all agree we just want to help, so whatever helps us do that to the best of our ability is we're down for it.
It's almost like you guys have done stuff like this before.
It's on the internet. How to.
So, Joe's Place has new house parents that are settling in, so it's an exciting time. We are still, keeping in contact with the house parents that just left. They had a baby. So, they bless us with pictures, et cetera. So things are going pretty well with that. Always a need for fundraising to help, so just keep that in mind. Any other committee reports? Okay. All right, I think we're on to action items. We've got the ECC, we've got the school change orders.
Move to approve the construction change orders as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Rachel. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Fiscal year 22 budget amendment 2.
Move to approve the FY '22 budget amendment 2 as presented.
Second?
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Ralph. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mitigation measures.
Move to reapprove the MRH Universal Mitigation Measures.
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion for exec session.
I move to enter into executive session in accordance with section 610.021, subsection 3, 9, and 13, and section 610.022 of the revised statute of Missouri on November the 18th, 2021, the following specific reasons, personnel matters.
Can I get a roll call?
No, we need a second.
Oh, sorry, I need a second.
Second.
I was just being excited. Okay, can I get a roll call?
Aye.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, motion carries. 5 minutes.
Warm up my feet.
There's the clock.